Hello, welcome to this edition of Digital Badge Academy's webcast series. I'm Jim Daniels, your co-host, here along with fellow co-host David Leeser, who's going to kick things off for us. David, we have once again something kind of unique to go over today.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because we talk to a lot of people that are establishing badge programs, and the first thing we usually tell them is badge what you have. And that makes it easy for them to understand, okay, I don't have to create something. I can just simply badge an activity I have, whether it is a course or whether it's some sort of award program, or if it's some sort of like a company like IBM has patent programs and things like that. But a lot of people don't realize that there are certain foundational elements that surround a badge program. And one of them is really a strategy for how you're going to develop a progression plan and how you're going to also establish sort of a taxonomy for your badges. And so we thought we'd talk a little bit about taxonomies and frameworks today.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not going to be just us pontificating about the importance of that. We actually have a real world example of of a skills and competency taxonomy that's been put in place. It's specific to the financial and banking industry, which is kind of interesting. I know a lot of times our references tend to be tied back to the IT world just because of our backgrounds, but around the world there are three major financial hubs in terms of locations, and that's New York, London, and Singapore. Singapore is the financial and banking hub for all of Asia. And recently, I was doing some work on behalf of a client, and I was looking around to see if there were any kind of frameworks in place, skills and competency frameworks specific to the financial and banking industry. And what I ran across, it was just kind of dumb luck, really, just blew my mind. It's the Institute of Banking and Finance, which is an organization that's based in Singapore that serves the needs of individuals and financial institutions, specific to helping them understand the skills and competencies that are really necessary to be successful in the financial and banking world. And the great thing about this, as I look through this, and we'll get into the show and tell here in just a moment, is it really aligns perfectly to the four major elements of a skills taxonomy. You know, there's the work to be done, and I know you know this better than I do, David, but there's the work to be done. There are the job roles that typically align to that work to be done. And then further into that, you get into the specific competencies associated with those job roles and the work to be done. And then lastly, there are the individual skills that feed into those competencies. So there's these sort of four major building blocks that form the basis for how a skills taxonomy can be formed, and ultimately how you can look at it from the standpoint of digital credentialing. You know, we talk a lot about in digital credentialing how, you know, it really needs to be representing specific skills and even competencies, right? You can come up a level from that. Also specific to using digital credentialing and badging. So we're going to walk through and look at what the Institute of Banking and Finance have developed for the benefit of individuals and institutions in this industry to help them understand how to go about thinking and sort of developing a mindset around a skills taxonomy and how that can actually map back to the use of digital credentials.
Yeah, I mean, this is not about banking. This is about, I think anybody that looks at this will go, "Well, I need to do this exact same thing." I mean,
Well,
this is a perfect model.
that's exactly right. And that's the whole point of when I found this, you know, I instantly thought to myself, this could apply to any industry, right? Any discipline of work and competency and skills that are out there. It just so happens that it's this specific example is tied to the financial and banking industry, but it is literally a model of excellence relative to how to build out a skills taxonomy and how to document that. So let's go ahead and jump straight in. I'm going to go ahead and share.
And there's the URL. So if you want to go take a look at it yourself, it's just ibf.org.sg.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the home page, and we're just going to jump straight in, and we're going to go in here for training providers, right? Um, and skills framework for financial services. This is what we're going to take a look at today. Okay, so here we are at the starting point of this skills framework that IBF has put together. This is all fully interactive. It's all 100% online, and you can work your way through this. And we're just going to take you on a brief tour of what this looks like. But as you can see here, there's a number of different disciplines that they have focused on within this industry as far as designing a skills framework. There's sales, after sales, distribution, and relationship management, trading and execution, operations, product solution and management, risk, compliance and legal, digital and data analytics. So you can think of those areas as this is where you define the work to be done, right? That's kind of the top level of a skills framework. What is that work to be done? We can see each of these tracks here, which align to that work to be done. And let's just go take a look at digital and data analytics. Obviously, a very applicable discipline within the financial industry. So if we dig into that, now we're at the role level. So we're one level deeper into this skills framework. So and I should add here that what this is really in service of is helping individuals and institutions understand how to build out L&D functions and career and talent management functions in a way that really will move people into careers and responsibilities that serve the financial and banking industry in the most effective way possible. So there's just been tons and tons and tons of thought put into this, just in terms of the content that goes along with it. And then, of course, on top of that, they've actually been able to structure this as a tool. And that, so there's kind of two sides of this. There's the information, the data, and how it's structured. And then there's how they present the information. So again, it's just a model of excellence. Any industry where there's the need for a particular skills taxonomy would benefit from having something that looks just like this, in my opinion.
And what's really great about this is something a college could do, a university, a workforce center, or a government organization or an enterprise. And when you do something like this, and this is what we're finding in our consulting world, is this helps people understand what they need to do behind this to develop the skills development programs and the credentials for it. And then they can also see the gaps, they can see the overlaps, everything else. So this is basically the architecture.
Absolutely, and that's a great way to characterize it, right? As an architecture. Um, so let's just continue on here, so we can see, again over here, these different tracks represent the work to be done. Now we're down to the particular kinds of roles that are associated with that work to be done. We can look at one here. Let's just go into data scientist. Makes perfect sense that there would be that kind of a role in the financial banking industry, given the volumes of data that would exist. So if we click on data scientist, all right, so here we are. We're now further in to that third building block, and for that matter, even the fourth. So the third and fourth building blocks, which is where we have competencies and skills defined. There's also a job description. That's important. I think from my standpoint, I don't see a lot of people getting away from job descriptions, but that doesn't mean, and I've seen this before, and David, you may have a point of view on this, where when we talk about a skills first transformation, and we talk about the work to be done and people having the skills and the competencies in hand to be able to go off and do that work. Sometimes in that conversation, it comes up that we shouldn't be thinking about job descriptions and things of that nature, that it's really just making sure that there are people with skills to go do the work that needs to be done, and that the actual job you show up and do each day doesn't always, which I do agree with this, doesn't always fit into a narrow container defined by a job description. At the same time, I don't see any evidence that job descriptions are going away.
No,
What's your thoughts?
they're not going away anytime soon. And but the important thing is, and if you look at the job description here, if you notice, they don't get into anything like you need a college degree or a minimum number of years. They're simply saying, what's the job to be done? And what give me a description of that, and now show me what a day in the life looks like. And that's a whole lot better way to do it. And especially if you can do it in a way that's not biased as well, because a lot of job descriptions are biased.
And that's just it, right? I think you just hit on the key thing. This is a different way of thinking about the job description because the job description now is written and structured in a way that speaks to the work to be done, right? And it is not littered with a lot of extraneous types of bits and pieces and other things that are in many ways irrelevant to what's important about doing this work. And then finally, we're down here. We're looking at specific skills and competencies, and now we're at um, the what I like to think of as like the third and fourth levels here. So we can pick any one of these. Let's just say let's pick data analytics and computational modeling, proficiency level 4.
Yeah, I mean, these are now we're down to the level of what do you train and what do you badge? That's where we're at now.
Exactly, and we both know from experience, um, back in our days at IBM and building out the IBM digital credentialing program, this was something that was developed downstream from when that program was started. We realized after we weren't too far down the road, but we did realize that, you know what, we really need to take a step back and think about how we want to define the different levels that are represented by the badges being issued in that program. And this applies to anybody that's leveraging badging, to stand up their digital credentialing program. That framework that you build around that, you really need to have different levels of proficiency that are being represented. That's important because it's if all you know is these are the number of people that have mastered this area, this particular skill, but you don't know where people are at on that journey toward learning those skills and getting to that point of mastery, then it makes it really hard to understand how to go about managing to that ecosystem on a day-to-day basis. The reality is you have people that are sitting at all different points along that learning journey toward acquiring these different skills and competencies. And so there are opportunities to badge and credential along the way, credential as you go, right? I mean, there's a whole organization that's devoted to credentialing incrementally, as we all know. So, but this is a great example of looking at knowledge and abilities and defining that across 3 different levels here. And I think this is just really important because if you don't have this kind of structure in place, it's really hard to put together a credentialing strategy and stand up a program that's using badges that make a lot of sense. You have to have these kinds of levels and they have to be defined. That brings transparency and clarity to all of your credentials, and that's just so important.
And I think sometimes people miss that. You need to know what a person, and by the way, even in the assessment space, an assessment should really look at whether it's a certification or it's a structured psychometric tool, like another type of assessment. It really needs to know at what, and at what level you have it. And sometimes people miss the mark on that.
Yeah, you're 100% correct on the assessment piece, and that is something that I work with clients on is to it's one thing to look at a learning program. Maybe it's an entire learning path that could play out over months, and there are different plateaus of skills and competencies that you can reach along that journey. At the same time, you have to think about how you're assessing for that. And if you're going to build assessments around that, we're right back to what you're looking at on the screen right now. You have to have this kind of detail in place so that you know what you're measuring for.
Yeah, what's really nice about this whole thing is that I mean, it took some work to do this, but this is a structure that anybody can use. again, you start with what's the work to be done? What is the job to be done? Then what are the roles that make up that job? So if you go back one level more, one more back. So, okay, so we have the very top is, okay, we have digital and data analytics and financial services. That's the work to be done, right? Then what are
Yep.
the roles to do it? And we have that.
Mhm.
And then you get into, okay, now what is the day in the life look like? And what are the key skills and competencies and capabilities that are needed?
And again, I maintain that this will apply across any industry,
Yeah.
any discipline, right? It's this just again happens to be in a financial and banking space. But and as you look at this, right, it's not that this is a hard thing to do. I mean, I've been on this end of it where I've had to sit down and come up with these kinds of definitions, right? And it does take some thought, and you do need to pull the right people together to be able to form these kinds of structures around your framework. But it's not a hugely gigantic lift by any means, right? But it again, it is super important to
Yeah.
have these
Once you do
components in
this,
place.
and once you do this, now you have the architecture in place and you can now see where the gaps are. And I hate to keep going back to that same page again. Would you mind going back to that, Dan, that other page that you had that had the capabilities and the skills at one level deeper? So you go into, yeah, do one, like do a different one. Do like data analyst maybe, or
Data analyst.
so we'll do data analyst. And then we get into the technical skills and competencies over there, like love data analytics and computational modeling, or any one of them.
Programming and coding.
Now, so here's the deal: is that if you know you have this is the job to be done, and these are the capabilities, this is the knowledge and the abilities to do it. Knowledge is typically a knowledge test, right? The abilities probably goes one level deeper: is can they actually apply that knowledge to actually do something? One of the things we found out with a big corporation we were working with, they came to us and they said, "Hey, we're issuing all these knowledge badges, but we don't have a lot of deep skills badges, these capabilities or these abilities badges. What's the problem here?" Well, the problem is they didn't have the content. They didn't have the assessments. They didn't have, that anything in place to be able to progress people from knowledge to real on the job ability to do it. And so when you create a framework like this or use a framework like this, you can instantly spot the gaps in your credential strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And and the one thing here, we're not necessarily advocating that anyone that wants to go off and stand up a credentialing program build a system that replicates what you're seeing here. That's not what we're saying at all. Obviously, this is a service being offered for the benefit of an entire industry on a global basis, right? So it's the it's the thought process that's been put into this and how they've layered in the different elements associated with this skills framework that I think is really important for people to sort of wrap their minds around and understand because that can really inform uh, your credentialing program in a way and underpin your credentialing program in a way that leads to a super high degree of integrity, especially if you have something like this that can serve as a reference. Maybe it's something in a simplified form that as a badge issuer you would have a landing page built around so that those consumers who are looking at these credentials that people in your ecosystem are earning, they have a way to go and look and say, well, let me understand what kind of standards are behind this. When I see something that says proficiency level 4 and it's in this area, what does that really equate to? And this is how you would communicate that outside the parameters of the actual digital credential itself. So
So that's it. Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's other disciplines and tracks here. We won't go into all of these. It's again, it's exactly what you've seen before. It's just different areas of work to be done and different kinds of roles that are associated with that. I did want to point out one thing that we sort of glossed over, and that is the critical core skills, sometimes referred to as essential skills, more and more being referred to as durable skills, right? So they've gone to the effort here of actually mapping in specific durable skills that are relevant to this particular job role, this area of work to be done, and specific to the kinds of technical skills and competencies here. We now see these durable skills that go along with that. And I think that's really important because, David, I know you've been talking about this a lot in social media lately about the uptick in interest around durable skills.
Well, yeah. I mean, with the job world changing as quickly as it is, and the dearth of talent in certain sectors, we have to start to think about what the essential skills are and what the future ready skills are. And well, I mean, that's another big conversation, but that's again an area that needs to be credentialed.
Yeah, yeah, and you can see here that this in this particular application of a skills framework, IBF has gone as far as to actually define these different durable skills and even apply levels to them. So, and that gets into the whole thing. How do you go about assessing durable skills, right? And I know there are tools on the market that allow, and solutions out there and innovations that allow for that as well. So that's it. That's literally all we wanted to do, is just provide another example of where an organization has pulled together, in this case, a skills framework for a particular industry in a way that is just exceptional and can really be an inspiration for anybody that's trying to launch a badging program, a credentialing strategy, regardless of what industry that you're in.
Well, thank you very much.
Are you looking to launch a digital badging program or improve an existing one? Look no further than Digital Badge Academy. Our highly popular online masterclass will help you gain the skills and insights necessary to achieve success. Enroll now and start learning today.